I was an emergency physician at St. Mary's Regional Medical Center in Burlington, Vermont. At least, I was until I handed in my resignation last month. For the sake of this account, you can call me Dr. Harrison. Most of the nurses and staff just called me Doc during my 12 years in that ER. In that time, I dealt with every imaginable crisis: car wrecks, overdoses, heart attacks, stabbings, gunshot wounds, and every variety of trauma a body can endure. But one case stands apart. It shattered my understanding of medicine and ultimately pushed me out of the profession entirely. St. Mary's is a Level 2 trauma hospital serving much of central Vermont and parts of New Hampshire. The building went up in the 1990s, modern by design, with a 24-bed emergency department that handles about 45,000 visits every year. I preferred nights, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., because of the pace and the kinds of cases that came in after dark. Nights in the ER are unpredictable. Sometimes you get hours of stillness followed by chaos. Other times you're running non-stop from the moment you walk in. On October 15th, 2022, it looked like it was going to be one of the quiet shifts. Saturday nights usually brought alcohol-fueled accidents, fights or overdoses, but the weather was cold and rainy, enough to keep most people indoors. By 2:30 a.m., we had only seen 3 patients: a college student with alcohol poisoning, an older woman with chest pain that turned out to be reflux, and a construction worker needing stitches after cutting his hand. I was finishing paperwork in the doctor's lounge when my pager buzzed at 2:47 a.m. The message came from our charge nurse, Linda Martinez. She'd been working the ER for nearly 20 years, steady and composed even during the worst crises. The page was brief: incoming trauma, ETA 5 minutes, possible drowning victim. I headed straight to Trauma Bay 1, where Linda was already preparing with 2 other nurses, Jennifer Walsh and Michael Torres. The paramedics had called in preliminary details: male, early 30s, found unconscious along the Winooski River by a late-night jogger. Hypothermic, unresponsive, signs of prolonged water exposure. "What's the water temperature been lately?" I asked as we readied warming blankets and IV fluids. "About 42 degrees this week," Linda replied. "If he was submerged for long, this is severe hypothermia." The ambulance rolled in at 2:52 a.m. The patient struck me as odd from the start. He looked to be in his early 30s, dark hair, pale skin with the bluish cast you expect in cold exposure. But his clothing was the first thing that caught my attention. Dark jeans, a plain black sweater, work boots, every single piece stripped of any labels or identifiers. No tags, no brand names, nothing at all. Not even size markings inside the boots. "What do we know about how he was found?" I asked the lead paramedic, Tom Bradley, who I had worked with many times. "A jogger spotted him at about 2:15, Tom said. "Face up on the riverbank, half a mile downstream from the Route 2 bridge. Soaking wet, cold, unresponsive. No ID, no wallet, no phone. Never reacted to anything on the scene." We began the assessment while the nurses hooked him to monitors. His core temperature was 89.2 degrees. Dangerous, but not the lowest I'd seen. Pulse was slow but steady at 52. Blood pressure 95/60. Oxygen saturation a surprising 96% on room air. But something was wrong. His lungs were perfectly clear, no water in the airways, no wheezing, no crackling, nothing to suggest aspiration. His skin, though chilled, showed none of the wrinkling or softening you expect after prolonged immersion. No pruned fingers, no maceration. "How long does the jogger think he'd been there?" I asked. She said she ran that route 2 hours earlier and didn't see anyone. "So less than 2 hours, Tom answered. "But the hypothermia suggests he was in the water a while." I ordered a full workup: chest x-ray, CT of the head and abdomen, blood tests, arterial gases, tox screen. While we waited, I examined him further and found more oddities. His arms and legs had superficial scratches, like he'd been dragged through brush or over rocks. But the pattern was too neat, too evenly spread, almost deliberate. No defensive wounds, no signs of struggling, nothing that looked like random river injuries. "His temperature's climbing faster than it should," Jennifer noted. "Already at 91.8. That made no sense. Core temps in the 80s don't normalize this quickly, not even with aggressive warming. Most patients take hours, sometimes days. By 3:45 a.m., lab results were back and the puzzle only deepened. Every value was normal. No infection, no electrolyte imbalance, no alcohol or drugs. His arterial gases showed perfect oxygenation, which is impossible in a near drowning. X-ray was clear, no fluid in the lungs. The CT scan showed a completely healthy brain with none of the damage oxygen deprivation usually leaves behind. In true drowning cases, the brain is the first organ to show injury. His looked untouched. "This doesn't make sense," I told Linda. "Everything says drowning, but nothing in the workup supports it." "Could he be hypothermic from exposure without water?" she asked. "Possible. But then why was he soaking wet? And why the riverbank?" At 4:15 a.m., something happened that I had never seen in my career. The man opened his eyes. I was at the foot of his bed reviewing notes when I felt him watching me. His eyes were wide open, an unnatural shade of bright blue, and they weren't confused or groggy, they were sharp, alert, aware. "Good morning," I said carefully. "I'm Dr. Harrison. You're in the emergency department at St. Mary's. Do you remember what happened?" No reply, but his gaze followed my every move. I took out a penlight to check his pupils. He never blinked, never flinched, just locked on me the entire time. Pupils equal, round, reactive. "Can you tell me your name?" Still nothing, just those eyes fixed on mine. "Do you know where you are?" He glanced around the room, monitors, IV poles, equipment, not with confusion, but with interest. His neuro exam was startlingly normal. Reflexes exaggerated, muscle tone perfect, grip strength unusually strong for someone who should have been weak and recovering. "Doc," Michael called from the monitor station. "His vitals are normal now. Temp 98.6, heart rate 72, blood pressure 120/80. That was impossible. No one recovers from severe hypothermia to perfect vitals in 2 hours. I had treated dozens of such cases. Recovery is slow and lasting effects are common. This man was acting like it had never happened at all. I tried a different approach. Instead of questions, I explained what we knew. "You were found unconscious by the Winooski River. You were dangerously cold when you arrived, but you're stabilizing quickly now. All of your tests came back clear, which is reassuring. We'll keep you here a little longer just to make sure everything stays stable." As I spoke, I noticed his expression shift. It wasn't the vacant look of a head injury or the dazed confusion of someone waking from unconsciousness. It was focused, intent. He was listening closely, weighing every word I said. "Do you understand me?" I asked. He gave one slow, deliberate nod. "Are you in pain?" He shook his head. "Are you unable to speak or choosing not to?" For the first time, I thought I saw amusement flicker across his face. The corner of his mouth lifted just slightly, as if the question itself was funny. I spent another 20 minutes running additional checks, switching up my approach, trying to draw some kind of verbal response. He was clearly conscious, alert, and perfectly capable of following commands. He tracked everything I did. He reacted appropriately to instructions, but he never spoke a word. And the longer I stood with him, the more unsettled I became. It wasn't ordinary uncooperativeness. I dealt with combative or resistant patients countless times. This was different. It felt like he was observing me, watching, cataloguing, analysing my responses, like I was the one under examination. Each question I asked, each reflex I tested, carried the unsettling sense that he was critiquing me, silently measuring whether I was competent enough. By 5:30 a.m., I stepped away to find a second opinion. I went to the break room where Dr. Patricia Reeves, our attending that night, was reviewing charts. She had more than 2 decades in emergency medicine and had seen nearly everything across New England. "Patricia, I need your take on the drowning case in Trauma 1, I told her, outlining the contradictions, the impossible recovery, the flawless vitals, the patient's unnerving behaviour. She listened carefully, though I could see doubt in her eyes. "Marcus, what you're describing is someone recovering faster than expected from cold exposure. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. Some people are simply hardier than others." "But the timeline doesn't make sense," I countered, "and his neurostatus is far too good for someone found unconscious on a riverbank." "Then maybe he wasn't drowning at all," she suggested. "Maybe he was just soaked from rain, maybe hypothermic from exposure, and the jogger assumed the river was involved." It was a fair point, but it didn't explain what I had witnessed. "Come see him for yourself," I said. "Something about this doesn't fit." She agreed and followed me back. The moment we entered the trauma bay, his eyes left me and locked onto her. The same intense focus, the same unwavering stare. Good morning, Reeves said, her tone warm but professional. I'm Dr. Reeves. Dr. Harrison has been looking after you. His gaze flicked between us, and again I felt that unsettling sense, like he was studying not just me, but the dynamic between the two of us, as though our interaction itself was under review. Dr. Reeves examined him thoroughly, repeating the same reflex and response tests I had performed earlier. Her results mirrored mine. Everything was normal, perhaps too normal. His recovery is remarkable, she admitted when we stepped aside. But I've seen unusual cases before. The body can be unexpectedly resilient. What about the missing ID, the clothing stripped of labels, the uniform injuries that don't match a drowning? I pressed. There could be explanations. He might be homeless, or maybe he removes tags for comfort. And rivers can produce strange wound patterns. Nothing here is impossible. She was pragmatic, sticking to rational explanations, but I could tell even she was unsettled. She agreed to keep him under observation and notify the police in case he matched a missing person report. I returned around 6 o'clock a.m. for one last check before the end of my shift. He was sitting upright in bed, wide awake, his skin colour fully restored, looking for all the world like nothing had ever happened. If I hadn't personally seen him arrive cold, unconscious and near death just 3 hours earlier, I would have thought he was simply a healthy man sitting in an ER bed for something routine. "How are you feeling?" I asked. He held my gaze for a long moment, then, for the first time, he smiled. It wasn't friendly, it wasn't comforting, it was the kind of smile that instinctively made me step back. "I'm feeling much better, Doctor," he said. His voice was clear, articulate, and carried a faint accent I couldn't place. "Thank you for your excellent care." The fact that he spoke so perfectly after hours of silence was shocking enough, but there was something in the way he said it, steady, confident, like someone accustomed to being in control, someone used to being obeyed. "I'm glad you're improving," I replied cautiously. "Are you ready to share your name with us?" He tilted his head slightly. "Names are limiting, don't you think? They tie us to identities, to histories. Sometimes it's better to just exist in the moment." It was a strange response, but I pressed on. "We need to contact your family or someone close to you. Someone must be worried." "That won't be necessary." "The police will need to speak with you," I continued. "They'll have to file a report about what happened." His smile widened a fraction. "I'm sure they will, but I don't believe I'll be available for that conversation." There was something in his tone that almost sounded like a warning, though I couldn't explain why it felt that way. I shifted tactics. "We'd like to keep you overnight for observation. Hypothermia can have delayed complications, and we need to ensure your safety before discharge." "That's very considerate, Doctor, but I don't think that will be necessary." "I'm afraid it isn't optional. You were brought in unconscious. We have a duty to protect you." He studied me then, as if deciding how much of his true intentions to show. "Dr. Harrison," he said, "you seem like an intelligent man. In your 12 years of emergency medicine, how many cases have you seen that truly defied explanation?" The question stopped me. He knew exactly how long I had been practicing. I was certain I hadn't told him, and there was nothing in the room that would have revealed that detail. "How did you know that?" I asked. "You carry yourself with the confidence of someone experienced, but still with the curiosity of someone who hasn't seen everything." 12 years felt like a reasonable estimate. It was a plausible answer, but it felt rehearsed, like he had prepared it long before I asked. "To answer your question," I said carefully, "I've come across cases that were difficult to explain, but medicine evolves. What we don't understand today, we often explain tomorrow." He smiled faintly. How refreshingly optimistic. "But what if I told you there are things that lie beyond your medicine? What if I told you not everything that comes through your emergency room can be reduced to physiology and pharmacology?" The direction of the conversation unsettled me. I'd spoken with psychiatric patients who believed in supernatural abilities or external control, but he wasn't delusional. He was coherent, rational, calm, and that made his words far more disturbing. "I think we should focus on your care for now," I said firmly. "We can talk philosophy later." "Of course, he replied smoothly. "You have other patients, other lives to save. I understand the demands of your work." I left the trauma bay more shaken than I had ever been after speaking with a patient. The facts didn't fit. His recovery was impossible, his behaviour was unnerving, and I couldn't shake the sense that something critical was slipping past me. My shift ended at 7 o'clock a.m. I handed the case off to Dr. Jennifer Kim, who was covering days. I detailed everything: the improbable recovery, the odd mannerisms, the refusal to identify himself. "Has he given you any hint when he might share his name or information?" she asked. "He's evasive," I told her. "Cooperative in some ways, but hiding something. I'm certain of it." "I'll see what I can do," she said. "Sometimes patients open up to a new face." I left for my apartment just 10 minutes from the hospital, but rest was impossible. My mind kept circling the same details: the flawless vitals, the inexplicable recovery, the way he seemed to know things he shouldn't. No patient had ever unsettled me like this. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was finally drifting towards sleep when my phone rang. It was Dr. Kim. "Marcus," she said, "I need to ask you about the patient from last night, the one found near the river." "What about him?" "He's gone." I sat upright, fully awake. "What do you mean he's gone?" "I mean he's not here. Sometime between 11 a.m. and noon he vanished from the hospital. Nobody saw him leave. He didn't check out against advice, and there's no trace he was ever here." "That's impossible. He was in a hospital gown. He had no clothes, no shoes, no ID. How could he just walk away?" "That's what I'm trying to piece together. Security is combing through the cameras, but so far they've found nothing. It's like he evaporated." I drove straight back to the hospital, still in the clothes I'd slept in. Dr. Kim met me in the ER and went over what they knew. The last confirmed sighting was around 10:30 a.m. when a nurse checked his vitals. Everything was stable. He was calm, talkative, and said he felt fine. When another nurse entered at noon, the bed was empty. What about his belongings, the clothes he arrived in? That's the strangest thing. His clothes are missing too. We sealed them in a red biohazard bag because they were damp and dirty. That bag is gone from the storage area. We walked to the trauma bay where he'd been treated. The bed had already been stripped and reset for the next patient. There was no trace that anyone had been there at all. Did anyone check the cameras in the hallways or exits? Security is reviewing now, but the system in this section has been glitching for days. Several feeds are corrupted or missing. It seemed too coincidental. Hospital security systems are built with backups specifically to avoid gaps like that. What about the police? Were they notified? They were scheduled to speak with him this afternoon. When I called to report he was missing, they promised to send someone. Detective Robert Walsh arrived about an hour later. A seasoned investigator who had handled many hospital cases, he listened with his usual guarded skepticism. "Dr. Harrison, Dr. Kim told me the basics, but I'd like to hear your account of the patient's condition and behaviour." I walked him through everything: the irregularities in his presentation, the strange conversation before my shift ended. Walsh listened closely, jotting notes and asking questions. Did he ever hint at leaving? Not directly, but when I said we'd keep him for observation, he dismissed it, almost like he had plans elsewhere. Any signs of confusion or mental instability? That's the thing. He was perfectly lucid, too lucid. He spoke as if fully in control of everything. Walsh spoke with the nurses and studied the little camera footage available. What he saw was routine hospital traffic, but nothing showing the man leaving his room or passing through corridors. "This is extremely unusual," Walsh admitted. "People don't just disappear from hospitals. Even if he walked out, someone should have noticed." "What about the riverbank where he was found? Any clues?" "I sent a team this morning. They located the area the jogger described. Nothing there. No footprints, no drag marks, no evidence at all." The investigation dragged on for days, yielding nothing. The jogger was questioned thoroughly, but her story held. She'd been running her usual route when she spotted what looked like a body by the river. She called 911, stayed with him, and waited for EMS. The paramedics confirmed everything. An unconscious, hypothermic man, no ID. Standard treatment, normal transport. They had no explanation for how he later vanished. The hospital launched its own internal inquiry reviewing staff actions and security measures. They found no negligence, but they did uncover that the camera failures had been broader than first reported. Multiple cameras across the hospital had malfunctioned in the same window of time, leaving gaps all over the system. Ike concluded the failures were likely software-related, but couldn't determine the cause or why so many systems had glitched at once. 3 weeks after the disappearance, I still couldn't stop replaying the case in my head. I lost sleep. I was distracted during shifts. I even started doubting my own clinical judgment. Rationally, I knew strange cases happen in medicine, and not every puzzle has a solution. But emotionally, I couldn't let go of the feeling that I had brushed against something outside the limits of medicine. I began digging through medical journals and old news reports, searching for parallels. What I uncovered disturbed me. Over the past 5 years, at least a dozen similar reports had surfaced across New England. The specifics differed, but the outline was the same. Unidentified people discovered in remote places, symptoms that didn't match their supposed condition, recoveries that defied reason, followed by sudden disappearances from hospitals. Nearly all were found near water. None carried ID. Their clothes had no labels. Their exposure symptoms never quite lined up with their physical state. Doctors and nurses described them as unusually sharp, often with knowledge inconsistent with their circumstances. And in every case, the patient slipped away before they could be identified. Security video was frequently corrupted, and official investigations always ran into dead ends. What unsettled me most was the toll on staff. Several clinicians reported insomnia and lasting anxiety after encounters. A few had even left emergency medicine entirely, citing burnout. I started to wonder if I was heading down the same road. This case had rattled me more than anything in my career, and I was questioning whether I wanted to continue in the ER. The breaking point came a month later. During another night shift, the triage nurse called me. "Dr. Harrison, there's someone in the waiting room asking for you by name." "What's the complaint?" "He says he's not sick, he just wants to thank you for your care." My stomach dropped. I walked to the waiting room, and there he was. The same man. Different clothes, but unmistakably him, sitting calmly in a chair, flipping through a magazine. When he spotted me, he smiled, stood and said, "Dr. Harrison, so good to see you again. I hope you've been well." "What are you doing here?" I told the nurse I only came to thank you. It's rare to meet someone so thorough, so curious about difficult cases. "You need to leave now." "Of course, I simply wanted you to know your curiosity was noted. Not everyone would have dug as deep as you did." The implication was obvious. He knew I had been researching. He knew I hadn't let go of his case. "Who are you?" "Dumb. I think you already understand, Doctor. At least enough to know I wasn't what I appeared to be." He turned toward the exit, then paused. "You may want to consider a new line of work. Emergency medicine is taxing, especially when you face cases that shake your worldview. Sometimes it's safer to handle problems that stay predictable." Then he walked out. I never saw him again, but his message was clear. He knew who I was, he knew where I worked, and he knew how deeply he had unsettled me. It felt like a warning, though about what I couldn't say. I handed in my resignation and relocated to New Hampshire, where I now practice family medicine. Routine patients, no night shifts, no trauma. I've never told the full story to anyone, partly because no one would believe it, partly because I don't want to invite attention from whoever, or whatever, he was. I still think about it constantly. I wonder how many other doctors have crossed paths with these patients. I wonder what might happen if someone pursued a full investigation. And most of all, I wonder if he was right, that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, that sometimes it's better not to ask questions. I sleep better now. But I still check my locks twice before bed, because somewhere out there, someone knows that I know.